Welcome to the Way She Leads podcast, where we integrate strategy, intuition, and real life leadership so that you can create impact with more joy and ease without pushing, proving, or burning yourself out. Hi, I'm Megan Akatu, former corporate leader turned transformational coach, and I help women feel fully alive in their purpose in a way that ripples out through every area of their lives. If you've ever felt like there is a better way, you are not wrong and you are not alone. Each episode brings you conversations with experts and real leaders sharing tangible and holistic practices to help you lead your life in a way that actually feels good, not just looks good on paper. Welcome in. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy that you're here today. Today, we are here with Sarah Castle, who runs Castle Coaching, and she is a former Amazon executive and also a wife and a mother, and she now coaches CEOs and senior leadership teams and specifically brings coaching practices into strategic planning sessions.
So good to see you. I love doing this with you.
So fun, so fun. Can you tell everyone a little bit about Sarah and how you became Sarah of today?
Wow, there's a lot. That's a loaded question. I can share a little bit about my path and how I got to do the work now that I love. So you had mentioned I started my career working in big companies. So I worked at General Electric and then I worked at Amazon, and that was the majority of my career for 15 years. And I was lucky to be able to move from role to role, always looking for what's the new thing I can learn? Or how do I grow to be a general manager? So I worked in mergers and acquisitions, human resources, the devices business, the books business. I led a technical startup at Amazon. And during this whole time, what I came to know was what gave me energy was coaching and mentoring people. And so, yes, I could run a business. Yeah, right. I could run a business. I could do all of the process work, the efficiencies or hiring or all those things. And what I loved was working with my people around how to achieve the careers they actually wanted, and then mentoring other, mostly women, but not all women, in other parts of the organization. And so, Megan, about 3 years ago, maybe 3.5, I had to look at the date, I made a really big pivot. And I left the corporate world. I went to become a professor of entrepreneurship at the College of Charleston, and then I started my own business. Since then, every year is such an incredible evolution.
Well, Sarah and I have a monthly catch-up call, which is one of my most favorite hours of every month. And we were going back and forth on, I have always attributed this idea around giving this talk about choices and decisions. And so just recently I said to her, I know you have this talk. I was like, you don't need to share it with me. I'm creating my own, but can I bounce a few ideas off of you? And she was like, is that mine? And I was like, I don't know. I always thought it was. And so we then just launched into just a really authentic conversation over the phone about what are choices, what are decisions, and most specifically around women making decisions at work. And I work almost predominantly with female leaders, and I hear this a lot. I just got promoted. There's more eyes on me now. My decisions have more impact. When I was at this level, it was easy for me to make decisions, but now I'm at this other level and it feels harder. So Sarah and I just had a beautiful conversation about that the other day, and we thought we would bring it here to the podcast. So Sarah, first, before we jump in here, can you explain in your definition what the difference between a choice is and the difference between that and a decision?
There's probably many ways to look at this, and here's how I think about it. A choice is the general direction. It's this knowing that I'm going to head down a path, but I might not yet know how, right? How or the what. But you have a little bit of the why, and so you're going to go that way, right? And then it might just be about the pieces coming together or the stars aligning or however you want to think about it. The decision is the moment where you choose the how or you choose the what. And when you make a decision, it essentially cuts off the other options. And we know I've learned we have a shared teacher, and we talk about often the root of words. And if you look at the root of the word decision, there's incision as part of that. So it is literally like a cutting off of other options, and not in a negative way, but in a very clear way. And so one thing that I notice, certainly with my clients and for myself, is often I feel like I should make a decision, but it might not be the right time for the decision. And instead I know the choice.
Love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And that, what you just said, felt very clear to me when you said the choice being the general direction, but the decision really being the moment.
Yeah.
Now we are clearly heading in
Yeah.
this direction.
I mean, I've had to my career point, right? Which is I knew I was going to change something. I knew I wasn't going to stay at Amazon for another 5 years. I knew that I was meant to do something else. It was time soon, and that I was going to pivot to another career path. I did tiny little things to help myself with that. One year I set up an LLC. I didn't know what my business was going to be.
Yeah.
I got headshots. Little did I know that I would be a speaker at an event. Like I did these small things that aligned with a choice, which was new career,
Yes.
right? Or next stage. I say I'm in like my fourth career at this
Yeah.
point, right? But then the decision came when I got the offer to teach entrepreneurship, which is such a fun and cool topic to teach young people how to ideate a new product or service and bring it all the way to prototype. Like it's so cool. And so I knew when I got that offer, like I made a decision that I was going to say yes to that job and then I would figure everything else out.
Love that. Love that. When there's even a pathway between what you were doing when you were teaching entrepreneurship and even the mentorship, right? They're both around like, how do we create this together? How can I support you? What are
Yeah.
all the ideas that we can put on the table? So there's a lot of parallels there. And from what you've seen, even in your corporate career and then now as a coach, where do you think, and we're going to center this around women here, where what do you think stops women from making decisions, or what makes decisions sometimes feel hard, specifically in the workplace?
My experience has been that I've worked with many women who you might characterize as indecisive. And maybe not in work, the decisions they have to make day to day as leaders, but when they're making some decisions about their own life
Mm-hmm.
or shifting or making some kind of change. And I've worked with many, and that's, probably why they sought out a coach is they knew they wanted to do something, they just couldn't figure out exactly how to do that. And so to tie it back to your question, I think it's a really interesting topic where sometimes we play these dual roles, right? Where
Yes.
we are decision makers in business. And then when it comes to other areas or aspects, we might hesitate more.
Yes. Okay. So if we follow that thread,
Yeah.
do you think sometimes the holdup is if it is more specific to them? Meaning like they can make decisions in a work context, but if it's about identifying like what I really want, is that where it sometimes can feel really crunchy?
Yes, I think so. I think I have seen that some leaders, I'll say like capacity for personal risk is lower, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's cultural or what we learn, but when it is about something that we need to do different, it even could be changing a company, right? So it's still career forward, but these big moves, I have seen many people in choice, but it takes quite a long time to get to the decision. And so some of it I think is probably tied to underlying beliefs. Some of it might be tied to wanting it to go exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm super lucky that I have been teaching young entrepreneurs, and I think about myself as an entrepreneur, and there's an amount of risk taking that
Yeah.
we have to take, like we have to have. And so, gosh, I would love to see more women be entrepreneurial in their risk taking about their lives.
That's so good. That's so good.
Like it's just so interesting to see where it's just like just go for it. The downsides are often so few, but I don't know if it's wanting perfection or wanting it to go exactly right or just being worried about what might end up different than planned. But I see hesitation in the decisions for whatever reasons those might be.
Yes. Well, and let me know if you see this. I would say something I see somewhat often is, and it feels like it's somewhere around the age 35, where a woman is advancing at work, been advancing. And it has largely been on like holding things together, right? Like making sure all the back end pieces are right? Like front end pieces are right, the presentation, right? This person's the spokesperson and really could kind of control all aspects. And then 35 comes, and I don't know that that's the magical age, but I feel like I see that, and it's either because there's also more responsibilities at home, and also the role is more strategic, it's higher level, the decisions have a bigger impact.
Mm.
I start to see women then almost like really what you're saying, like really hesitate and be like, this feels more uncomfortable than it did like when I was 25, right? Just doing all the things and holding all the pieces together. And this actually feels pretty true to my personal story as well, of like, I felt like the early part of my career was built on being the person that had like thought everything all the way through, who held all the pieces, knew everything from like A to Z. And then at some point that skill is no longer valued, right?
Well, you have to level it up, which is you can't see all those things anymore because
Correct.
you're operating at a higher level and you have to
Correct.
trust others or delegate, right? All of those things. Yeah.
And I feel like there's not necessarily within organizations that like, but there's also, I never felt like there was someone around me or someone above me who could like teach me to do that, or
Yeah.
to like be more comfortable delegating, or just even being more comfortable not knowing all the answers, because I
Right.
basically had spent my whole like schooling career and my early career knowing everything.
Yeah, and that's interesting you say that. I'm thinking back, and I don't think this is a topic of discussion often. Even in mentoring, one thing, so when I was kind of rising in levels, I always wondered like how could those people more senior than me, like how did they know to ask such a great question?
Yes. Yes.
What, like, wow, that was so sharp, spot on. Like how did they know that? I wouldn't have even seen it. And then as I got more and more exposed to information, which is what happens, I think, as you grow in your career, you get access to different things. And as I started to have more access, what I realized is a lot of times most senior leaders had seen the things before.
Yes.
So maybe
Yes.
there was a pre-meeting or maybe some identical situation happened the year before or something. And so the questions were coming from a totally different place.
Yep.
And so there is this piece where I've had this conversation with several women I work with, which is you have to realize that there's an uneven access to information. And so we're going to make different decisions or ask different questions depending on that. And so it is true, like you know less as you move up. You're less in the details, but you also have access to this like zoom out perspective that you might not have had before, and making the shift, your own mindset shift to being like the one in the details to the one who has to see bigger, and setting yourself up to be able to make decisions from that perspective, I think it's a growth opportunity, and one that's likely not taught or even modeled because a lot of it's internal dialogue that's happening.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I even you normalizing, let's say you are mentoring someone, even you normalizing, there's an uneven distribution of information is helpful to a younger person to be like, oh, that's why I didn't
It's
understand
not
that.
that
Like,
that person's brilliant and you're not. They just saw
right.
this yesterday,
Right.
right?
Right.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Okay. And so, all right. So go back to women
Yeah.
making decisions within the workplace. How
Okay.
much, or like, what are your thoughts about the interplay between clarity around the decision? So even earlier when you were talking about, slowing decisions down or hesitating, do you think that's a clarity issue, a confidence issue? Yes. And what are your thoughts around that?
I generally believe that most people know what they want.
Keep going.
And that's the
Say
clarity.
more.
But the but is, but don't know that they know what they want. So this is the intuition part of it,
Yep.
which is often there is this inner knowing. Men and women have this for sure. And usually there's something that's been bubbling up or it's been playing in your mind and you have some ideas, but you haven't like landed on it. Maybe you haven't written it down or maybe you haven't said it out loud. And so when it comes to clarity, I often think clarity is somewhere in there. It just hasn't been almost like communicated in a way that lands yet.
Okay.
That makes
Yes.
sense.
Yep.
And then, okay, what was the other part of your question? You said clarity.
Confidence.
Oh, confidence. Yeah. So I think that's the belief in yourself. And I do think that that is challenging for many folks, which is the confidence to say yes or no to something that could have a material impact on your life and your family, or, whatever the other spaces in your life are. And so I think that some of that decision hesitation is concern or worry, or you could call it lack of confidence that the outcomes will be how you hope them for them to be.
Yes. And I even want to connect that back to something you had said earlier about going the way that you expect, or like almost like having control over the
Yeah.
outcome. And so I'm going to bring in another C word about capacity. Sense. So if we follow what you just said, you said a lot of people probably have the clarity, whether or not they know it's quite there, or like they know how to access it, right, is one thing, right? There's some, perhaps some confidence, but even the capacity to be okay if if the impact or the outcome isn't exactly what
So
they think. And if I had to pinpoint, I would actually say that that's probably the thing that like, and that might, do you think that's more specific to women?
I don't know. I work with mostly men now, which is interesting,
Yes.
just how my client base has
Yes.
evolved.
Yes.
I see it across the board. Yeah. For the idea of confidence, the key to building confidence is practice. So
Yes.
what this makes me think about is if you are not practiced in some of these decision types, right, or very practiced in others, that you might have less confidence in your own choice or your decision, right? And so the piece that I would push people on is like the only way you get practice is you try, you go for it,
Right.
right?
You
Like
make more decisions.
you make more decisions. You don't sit on them. You decide if it didn't go the way you hoped, you make a new one, right? The whole idea is like none of this is permanent, that you always can make new choices. You always can make the next decision. And so it's like, how do you get in the reps so that you get better and better at being aligned with the decisions or the choices that you're making?
Yes. There's literally a sticky note near my desk that says, it's not a failure, it's a rep.
Yeah, right? Right. It's like building muscles. You're building a decision muscle. At Amazon, one of the kind of interesting, it's not a principle, but I would say it's part of the language because there's a high focus on high velocity decision making,
Okay.
right? Like how do you
Yeah.
make decisions quickly so that you can move quickly and be competitive, right? In that
Right.
company setting. And one of the ideas that's often referenced is this idea between a one-way door and a two-way door. So have
Okay.
you ever worked in a kitchen or a restaurant,
Oh, right. Where they have the two-way door.
right? It
Yes.
swings back and forth. Yeah. So the idea is like high risk things, it's one way. You walk through the door, there's no going back,
Right.
right? Or going back is really hard. You're gonna like bend the hinges or whatever
Right.
it might
Right.
be, right? Two-way is you walk back and it's relatively easy to come back through. It's swinging,
Yes.
right? And so if we were to think about more personal decisions in that way, like what's the risk of return or that, right? And you can classify like what would be the risk to my family or to my career or to my home or parents or whatever it might be. If we could bring more of that kind of approach or concept into decision making, it might help us actually make decisions faster. So we don't sit on things. And I'm not saying fast decisions are necessarily the best decisions, but I don't want people to be in that limbo, that
Right.
indecision limbo for long periods of time because everything gets stagnant then.
Yes, yes, and yes, it really does slow things down. And people, from a morale standpoint, like if you're sitting, at a leadership team meeting, right, and like something's coming back from like 60 days ago, you're just like, oh my gosh, right? Like,
And
I thought we put this to bed. And it's like I had a whole bunch of energy, right? Like 60 days ago, I put a lot of like research and thought, and now that we haven't landed this plane, it's like everyone's just trying, they're like, fine, fine, like just make it. And then that's not necessarily.
that's a whole nother topic, which is to me about accountability.
Okay, go for it. Go for it.
In that, if those repetitions are happening where you're like, we've talked about this, to me, there's a breakdown potentially in accountability in that space. And this might be relevant to the larger topic of decision making in general, but for there to be great accountability in an organization or in a human or in a family or whatever the entity might be, you need clear expectations. Do you really know like why you're doing this, what it's for, what the expected outcome might need to be? So clear expectations. Number two is clear ownership. And that means one person owns it, not
Yes.
two, not a committee. And what comes with ownership are decision rights.
Yes.
So in your example, the decision
Yes.
rights were not clear
Correct.
because it's
Correct.
coming back around, or people didn't commit to the decision that was made. So that comes up a lot. And then the other two parts of accountability are regular feedback, right? So that you're having conversation about whatever the thing is, you're adapting or adjusting, you have metrics that you're looking at or discussions with people. It can show up in lots of different ways, but there's some rhythm where you're sort of able to surface things that might be going differently. And then the last one is consequences. And I don't mean
Right.
that in a negative way.
Right.
Consequences could be positive or negative. It could be rewards, awards, it could be celebration, right?
Right.
But it could also be, if it's in a role, maybe reduction of scope or someone else gets put into the lead or maybe it's not the right job for you. There's all these other pieces. But when it ties to decision making, I think often the challenge or the thing you could hone in on, fix, especially if you're in that repetitive, like we're on this topic again, is expectations were probably not clear and ownership was probably not clear. And if you can get those, you can accelerate decision making and hold to
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I'm like, my brain is firing with too many examples. No, it's perfect. It's perfect of like things that if I think about in my prior organization where it was like the lack of who owns the decision
Yeah.
and then like the lack of consequences, which essentially means there's no accountability, and then I feel like that was an energy drain, right? To revisit these things over and over again. And then it's not even just an energy drain, then it, erodes morale. But we're not going to go down that path right now. You have actually dropped so many gems. I don't even know if you've realized this, but one, this idea of like, how do we normalize that? Like higher up the chain, you probably do have more access, which helps you see things, right? Which helps you ask better questions or poke holes in things. Right? But even normalizing this one-way door versus this two-way door, if we like bring that into
Yeah.
like our daily decision making, it's like, okay, what is the worst that's going to happen? And you can walk down that train, and
Yeah.
that
Can I
helps you
reverse
make.
this? If I
Yes.
can reverse it relatively easy, then why won't I just decide today?
Yeah. Yes. I love that. I love that. And then even
Get
just
my
being
reps in?
right, get your reps in. And then even just normalizing getting the rep in. Like this is not a failure. This is a rep. And either way you're gonna learn something from it and then you can do it again tomorrow
Yeah.
and
And
figure
from
out what's
there,
next.
you build confidence, right?
Yes. Yes.
As adults, I think we lose track of the fact that practice is required. We're
Yes.
so good at like a kid, practice your
Right.
walking, practice your running, practice your feeding yourself, whatever, riding your bike.
Right.
And we get to adults and we're like, well, I should just know all this stuff. No. Like the most amazing leaders, the most successful, however you define it, people, they're practicing things all the time.
Right.
You and I are
Yes,
practicing
they are.
things every day. And some days it's like,
Right.
I got it. And other days I'm like, ooh, actually that
Right.
practice didn't go so
Right.
well. Yeah.
Yes, yes, you are correct. Hence why we were just talking out, right? We had this totally organic conversation about choices and decisions the other day because I'm coming up with a talk. So there's always an edge of, oh, I haven't done this before. And I need to make some choices and decisions about how I'm going to present this information.
Yeah. And I watched this really awesome video yesterday. It was the head coach of the Duke basketball team talking to her
Oh,
women's basketball team.
yeah.
Have you seen this?
No, no.
It's so amazing. We'll see if we can put it in the call notes. But essentially what she was talking about is like things don't get easier. They just get harder. So we all have to get better at handling harder things. And
Yes.
that could be why decision making gets slowed or why we might be indecisive is because the decisions become harder decisions. The more
Yeah.
responsibility you have or the more
Yeah.
impact you could be
Hmm.
having. And so instead of waiting for something to get easy or not practicing, right? Or making something seem bigger than it might be, which causes hesitation, I think it's also important to recognize that often as you're leveling up, the choices and decisions might be harder.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
how do you just become great at making tough choices?
Yeah.
Or making
Yeah.
those hard decisions. And then, right, those become easier. And once those are easy, then you have harder things to work on. But it's not bad necessarily. It's just about the growth that's happening.
Love that. Love that. Yeah, with the growth mindset. And that, even what you're saying, is goes back to the capacity, going back to the capacity to handle harder and harder
Totally. Right?
decisions.
Just think about the decisions you made 20 years ago,
Right.
the blast radius or the
Right.
potential positive impact compared to the ones that you make today.
Right.
It's very different.
Very different. Yes. Yes. For you, like when, I guess use some of the things that we've talked about. Like when have you felt the most confident about making decisions? Like what were some of the other things in play that allowed you to make decisions quickly or make decisions confidently?
So interesting you asked that because I think about myself as being like a pretty decisive person.
It's one of the things I love most about you.
And I believe I was trained
Okay.
to be a decisive person. I
Say
think
more.
that comes from 20 years of being in leadership positions where increasingly my job was to make decisions.
In an organization, sorry to cut you off, in an
Totally.
organization that valued quick decision making.
Totally, right?
Yeah.
So meetings became, the more senior I got, like I was a participator in meeting, I might have been like feeding the information, waiting for someone else to decide. And then the more senior I became, the meetings were for me. People
Yeah.
were bringing me information, and then my job was to decide.
Yes.
So I do think that I'm inclined to be decisive, but I also have 18 years of training
Yeah.
where my job was making decisions every day. That's
Love that.
the reps, right? But I still have challenges. Like I'm thinking about this example where I left my full-time teaching job so I could grow my business more. And I had planned to go back to teach one class in the spring of 2026. And like I knew wasn't really ready to do it. I needed more time because my business had grown and I wasn't sure I had the capacity. And for some reason, instead of saying no, I I kind of looked at my availability and the person I was working with, I'm like, okay, I would miss X, Y, and Z. Would that be okay? Knowing that the answer was probably going to be no, you would be missing too much. But like I gave decision rights to someone else.
And
This was only a couple months ago because I had a hard time making my no clear.
okay. And upon reflection, we're going to jump into coaching mode. Why do you think you handed over your decision making rights in that decision?
I was trading off my clarity with a previous commitment that I had made. Like I knew it was a no, but I had already said yes some time ago, and I wanted to hold to my commitment, right? And so I think many of us, even if we are regular decision makers in certain settings, like there are times where like I could have just said no, things are still too full or too, I'm still figuring
Mm-hmm.
it out. But the commitment I had made weighed out more in that, and so I handed over the rights.
Yeah. So you put the commitment over your own clarity in that
Yes,
particular
yeah,
situation.
yeah,
Yes.
and I think other people probably do that sometimes too.
Yes.
And so to your question about like how do you become good at that, or like what, like I have many moments too where like there's something about a decision that gets me tangled up.
Do you think for you, does it normally involve commitments to other people?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
It's
Which is good to see.
almost always the
Yeah.
trade-off of like in service of others versus taking care of yourself, myself
Yes.
in this case.
Yes. Yes. Well, and you had even said decision making rights earlier. And I think this is actually this could be its own, right, its own podcast. And even having clarity though in the meeting, like, am I the decision maker in this meeting or is someone else?
Yeah.
And then when someone else is, and that person has made a decision, or hasn't, right? Because they also, not making a decision is a decision. It's also one of the ways to conserve your own energy is to allow that person to make a decision and then you just move on.
Yes.
But when we make that person wrong, when we say they didn't think about XYZ, they haven't considered this, they didn't take my idea, we can save ourselves a lot of pain by really honoring who has the decision making right in that particular meeting or decision.
Yes. And I would say what you're talking about, should come into play like 80% of the time. And like the 80% is, what are you committed to? You're committed to someone else being the decision owner, right?
Right.
Or the
Yeah.
right holder. And so then you let it play out, even if it's differently than how you would do it or how you anticipated it to go. And so I think there's this connected piece, which is when you are not the decision maker, how do you align your commitment to following whatever that decision was and not using your energy like to add friction to that,
Right.
which is the draining I think you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes.
The other 20% is the times you really need to fight back or push back.
Right. I
You
love
don't
that.
believe in
I love
something.
that. Yes.
And so it's not always like just go with it.
Right.
But you only take that to a certain point and then you ultimately likely have to commit to whatever it is, right? After you've put in your diligent effort for your, counter negotiation or other perspectives or what it might be. But it is interesting how you're really thinking about the energy spent when it comes to decision making, because I think it is a leakage of energy when you're sitting on something that you feel like you need to decide but for whatever reason, like you just
Hmm.
haven't decided yet.
And then I think that ties back to the clarity of like, do you have clarity and you just haven't made the decision because, someone's going to be upset, right? Like there's going to be some maybe
Yeah.
negative personal consequences, or you actually haven't even found the clarity or given yourself the space to get clear. I think it's also really easy to just jump from meeting to initiative to initiative. And then there's like two decisions that are just hanging out over here. You're like,
Yeah.
I just, I haven't gotten to that yet. Well, at some point, holding those decisions up do affect other people.
For sure, right? There is often a broader impact, whether it's at work or in family life
Right.
or other settings. Yeah. I would offer up that sometimes it's okay not to decide. It's okay to have the choice, right? The general path, the general direction. And then to be able to say, I'm not ready to make a decision on this, or I need to see how these other things play out. So I will make a decision at whatever point in the future. This is kind of like, you might call it a date for a date. Like, I'll decide in June or whatever. And even that act of saying you'll decide at some point in the future is energy conservation.
Absolutely. And it also communicates clearly to other people when you will make that decision. So they also know
Totally.
what to expect. And I think that saves them energy too, wondering like, well, what's going on with Sarah? What's going on with Sarah? It's like she said June 1, we would
Yeah.
have more information.
Yeah. And then you get to, everybody gets to shift their energy into whatever the priorities might be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I love that. Yeah. So basically so much more freedom with more clarity.
Yeah. It's okay to punt things. Like you don't have to
Yes.
decide right now, but you want to let yourself know when you're going to decide so you don't spin on it for long periods of time or let others kind of be in that limbo or waiting mode.
Yes. Yes. If even if you think about you personally, and we discuss even embodiment quite a bit on this podcast, how do you know when you are making a decision that is correct for you?
Oh, you asked a question about this earlier, and I think I strayed, and this was in my mind. I, to the point of being lucky to probably be a more decisive person, I've also practiced a lot, as I said. But I have experienced many times in my life and work where I just know. And that sounds like, what is that? It's just knowing.
Love
But
that.
I think a lot of people can relate to it,
Yes.
which is it's a full body relaxation. There's no negative self talk. It's completely clear in my mind. It's a yes or it's a no. And I can just feel it.
That is
This
amazing.
is what I knew when I made my last career shift. Like when I got the opportunity um, to move into teaching and then open my own business, like I just knew.
Right. Yes.
It was crystal clear. And I know other people experience that too. We are, as humans, so great at overriding what
Yes.
we know.
Right.
But
Right.
it's a good tie, like to tie it into the physical. Like I just was completely at ease.
That is amazing. Amazing. And then knowing that the brain's going to come back in and say, well, you can't do that and you can't start your own business and that feels risky.
Logical. You're like, how are you going to earn money?
Right. Right. To just recognize, oh, but I was feeling very easeful and now this is the rational side, and being
Yeah.
able to separate those two is really
Yeah. And
important.
to that point, it was a two-way door.
Right. That is,
Can I come
you are
back
correct.
and change?
Right.
For sure. So I'm just
Yes.
going to go try. I know it's time for me to go try this now.
That
Yeah.
is, yeah, that is beautiful. Well, one thing that I would love to appreciate you for is Sarah and I met several years ago, and she immediately just opened up on something very vulnerable. And I think that's what started our friendship years and years ago, because it was like, okay, if she's just going to open up and we barely know each other, then I can do that too. We kept in touch both as professionals and as friends. And one of the things, though, that I appreciate Sarah the most, and she had mentioned it earlier today, was constantly being in the editing mode of like, I tried this, and how does this feel for me and my life and my family, professionally? Okay, I'm going to tweak this. Okay, next thing, you are very accountable to yourself, and that is, I think that's just that's a beautiful model for other people to follow as well,
Thank
of
you.
what you can achieve when you hold that level of accountability to yourself. So thank you for being that model.
Thank you. That's so kind. I'm always working on it, working on me.
You are, and I love it. I love it. Are you ready for 3 quick fire
Ooh,
questions?
yes. Oh, okay.
They're going to be fun. They're going to be fun. What does feminine leadership mean to you?
Man, this is an opportunity. Okay. Feminine leadership is bringing the whole person into the work or space. There were many years where I had to, like, this was my work self and I had my personal self. To me, feminine leadership is recognizing like the fully integrated and really knowing the people that you work with. I think that's one part of it. There are many other parts too. But teams, I believe, work better when you know each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. Thank you. What is the Sarah secret sauce?
Discipline. Sorry, I know it sounds horrible. The secret sauce. Yeah.
Positive discipline. I don't know.
I think it's a little bit of what you were recognizing me for. Some of the things I'm great at, trying new things, being in that growth mindset. What am I going to learn? And then aligning that with like consistent discipline and effort to get better or grow. Yeah. So the action, like the principles are there, but the action is key.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That feels like Sarah in a nutshell. Good job.
Oh, no.
What are you reading or listening to right now?
I just finished this book called Buy Back Your Time. And the idea of it is that you make business decisions focused on how to buy your time versus to grow the business. And so I have I've got a whole to-do list coming from that book. And now I'm reading a book called Broken Country, which is, I go fiction, nonfiction, fiction, nonfiction.
It's so you. I love it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate your time.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening today. I would really, really appreciate it if you left comments and sent in a review. This really helps me understand what resonated with you so I can continue to create more episodes that speak to you. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.